There are enough voters who understand the difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. But also, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have a record to run on. The uncommitted campaign is part of the process, right? Like, one of the reasons we wanted to be an early state was to give people the opportunity to have their voices heard early in this process. And that's what they've done. And you see this president's listening. You know, yesterday he started talking about a ceasefire. He's listening. When we participate like this in the primary, it doesn't mean that they're not going to be voting for Joe Biden in November. We're going to roll this momentum into a victory in November for the president.
And that is the chair of the Michigan Democratic Party speaking with NBC News before yesterday's results came in for the state's primary. They're expressing confidence Democrats will turn out for Joe Biden in November, despite a sizable protest vote last night. As expected, President Biden did win the state of Michigan easily last night, but with more than 100,000 people casting ballots for uncommitted, mostly in protest over his handling of the Israel-Hamas war. On the Republican side, Donald Trump racked up another big victory over Nikki Haley, but with some big warning signs for him there as well. Good morning. Welcome to Morning Joe. It is Wednesday, February 28th. With us this morning, the host of Way Too Early, White House Bureau Chief at Politico, Jonathan Lemire, U.S. Special Correspondent for BBC News, Katty Kay, columnist and Associate Editor for The Washington Post, David Ignatius, Assistant Managing Editor and Washington Bureau Chief for The New York Times, Elizabeth Buemiller, and Deputy Managing Editor for Politics at Politico, Sam Stein. Good morning to you all. So, Joe, we're going to have Steve Kornacki. He's waiting over at the board, break down the numbers for us. But a couple of headlines, a big uncommitted vote against Joe Biden, but also, again, when you look at Donald Trump, Nikki Haley winning almost 300,000 votes in the state of Michigan, taking them away in the Republican Party from Donald Trump.
Well, and again, we talked about this yesterday. This is democracy. If there's a time that you're in Michigan and you want Donald Trump to be stopped, but you want to send a message to Joe Biden, you want to send a message to the White House regarding their position on the Middle East and Israel and Gaza, it's a perfect time to do it. And what did we hear? We heard the leader of the Michigan Democratic Party saying, this is what we're doing, and this is a wonderful time to do it. We are all aligned and want to see Donald Trump beaten and Joe Biden, want to see him win in the fall. The same can't be said, though, can it, Willie, for Donald Trump? He has over a quarter of the vote voting against him, and what you hear from supporters of Nikki Haley are that their votes are not transferable. They're not voting for Donald Trump. You hear time and again Republicans saying they're moving away from Trump. Also, it's important to remember all the people like me that were once members of the Republican Party that left, and people like me saying they would never vote for Donald Trump and never vote for anybody that ever supported Donald Trump for one day. So, again, you have a lot of people. This is a Republican Party that keeps shrinking because of Donald Trump. And even inside of that shell of the old Republican Party, you've got whether it's 25% or 30 or 40% saying they're not going to vote for Donald Trump. That's going to have impact in the fall.
Yeah, I mean, barring a seismic event, Donald Trump is going to be the Republican nominee. But in state after state after state, yes, his margin last night was bigger over Nikki Haley than it's been. But her winning almost 300,000 votes tells you a lot about where the Republican Party is. That's a big chunk of the party, nearly 30% last night, saying we're not going along for the ride this time with Donald Trump. So where do those votes go in the general election is a big question. Let's